Go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the stream. Oh, some people will be showing up. This is Jawin with Jack. This is episode number 2, and my guest tonight is UltraTTRPGer, and we are here to talk about what, if I heard correctly, your very first RPG publication?
That would be correct.
Very good, sir. So, Ultra, go on and introduce yourself to all the folks here who don't know you.
All right. So for those who don't know me, my actual name is Hunter, but on the X Machine I go by the Ultra American TTRPGer, aka the Jim Jones of classic gaming, and that's a joke in itself, which I can go into at another time. But yes, I started playing TTRPGs. Didn't get started until 2019, when during the year of our Lord and Savior COVID-19, as I like to call it.
Wow. So 2019 is when you started? That's excellent, man.
Yeah, I was about in my mid-20s, I think, at the time,
Okay.
and I just had a kid. Hey, Patty, good to see you. I just saw him pop up in the chat.
Oh yeah,
And
up the chat on that right.
yep, and
Patty!
sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. Yeah, so yep, 2019, and I just had a kid too. My son was like just born that November 2018. So I'm trying to do my adulting kind of deal. And then COVID happens, stuck in the house with my parents, with my kid, going insane. And that was when
that would do it.
That was when I was showing you earlier that we said, wait, now this was to be the perfect time to bring it in. Well, that was when I discovered City of Mist, the role-playing game. I think I just happened to see it on Facebook one day, and it caught my attention. Because I always heard about Dungeons and Dragons. I was familiar with it, heard of Critical Role. Just didn't really catch my attention because when I think about it now, because it's actually something I've been thinking about lately, I like the more of the modern fantasy setting where you're in, kind of like how Bright is the movie with Will Smith, it's that modern day, but you have the elven essays and the goblin drug dealers kind of deal. Yes. That kind of modern fantasies. That's always what stuck out to me. And City of Mist was kind of what hit that for me, where I got to I create a character and he's got these powers from like a god or historical figure or a monster of some sort. So my very first character I ever made, the very first time I ever played, was a high school student that was a rift of Joseph from the Bible. So he had this coat that was, of course, had all the different colors, and he also had like visions, just like Joseph did. And he was an orphan, but the orphanage he had his brothers, which are the play on the many brothers that Joseph had in the Bible. Now, what's funny though was I didn't start out as a player. I didn't play that character till later on. I tried to get into games, no one was running them, so I decided to pick up the book, and I became a forever GM for quite some time. So I actually started running City of Mist games for the longest time. And so that going from there, fast forwarding about maybe 2 or 3 years, give or take, we'll say, I start looking into other games, mostly because I know I can't do everything with just one game. So I started looking into, I know Shadow Dark at the time had picked up. Of course, I didn't get into that till later, but it was kind of still on the radar here and there, because at that time you had the OGL debacle with Watch C and all that was happening.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going to try not to involve politics as much as I can, but I will say it does take a small part in how I got to where I am today. There was the rise of the woke in the TTRPG hobby was also happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started to kind of see it in like some of the games, some of the shows I was listening to. And so I started wanting to kind of be that change. And of course, I got all the slandering and not the feedback, what's the word I'm looking for?
Pushback?
Pushback, thank you. I don't know. I was thinking slashback for some reason. I don't know where that word even came from. And so, and that was when when Musk finally got X back. That's when I decided to rejoin at Twitter/X. It's because I was staying away from it for the longest time.
Right.
And that's when I started getting to know, first I got to know Nerd Cognito, because they actually had me on their show when a game that I backed tried to cancel me because of because I was not safe for their audience, apparently.
It's really sad.
And so I came on their show to share my side of the story. That gaming company was invited too. and they blocked them. They would not. They never responded to them about wanting to come on the show to share their side of the story. So my side of the story was the only one that ever got shared. So from that point, I got to meet guys like you, guys like Patty, Off Grid Gamer, who's also in the chat as well. Good to see you, man. And that's what also I got to know at one point Miguel and Sylvia of the Wretched RPG and of the Red RPG. And what I actually, before I actually got into Wretched, the reason how I actually got to meet them was I started playing Horde Wars when it was just Horde Wars Basic.
Okay.
And and then one of the games I played, so I had played a couple times, but I never played the beginning adventure that came in Horde Wars Basic. Todd, the creator of Black Horde Wars, was running it one day, and Miguel and Sylvia decided they wanted to play the game and give it a test. So I got to play alongside them, just slaughtering goblins left and right. Like Sylvia killed so many goblins in that adventure. It was ridiculous because she had this archer ability that she could just shoot an arrow and kill like 10 in the line if they were all set up that way.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how I got to know them. I joined their Discord. Now, I will not hide the fact that I've had my own issues with Retro RPG, especially from the rules-light background I usually come from, and I've been very open with Miguel and Sylvia about that, which I think is why I've earned like a lot of the respect, because I'm like, hey, I like this or I like this. I'm not a big fan of this, because like I want to see everyone succeed, and it's like I know like I'm what I enjoy, not everyone else will enjoy. But if I can at least bring something to the table and try to make this hobby better than what it is currently, that's what I want to do. And then
it's true that feedback is feedback no matter what. So, I'm sure any indie publisher like those two appreciates, sincere feedback on what people want to see in their games. Because,
Yeah. And I'm very big on supporting independent creators mostly because a lot of these games I own that I'm holding in this pile right here, like my 3-4 different piles I got just on my desk right here that no one can see at the moment. There's a lot of them are from like mostly independent creators. Like the first one I got when I started, hold on, I'm moving books around, was if you know, you may have seen this guy around, Dystopian Dawn by Tony, which is his take on a post-apocalyptic Earth. And I actually, as soon as I saw it, I bought the whole package before all the extra stuff even came out. So it was the player's guide, the player's guide, the game master's guide, and then there was like there was a GM screen, a player screen. I got some dice bag, and then he threw in PDFs of the previous 2 adventures he made, and then I actually started helping him play test. Like I play tested the Time Warped. I helped play test the Vikings and Robots. I did not play test his Cowboy one that he made, but I still have that just because timing wise I was doing something else, so I didn't get to play test that one. But I did help play test Vikings and Robots for a little bit. So I am very big on supporting independent tabletop creators, big time. Hey, I saw that Savage and COA are here in the chat, and so is Pun King.
King, Patty, thank you. All the usual suspects showing up for us.
Yep. And so, and now kind of to fast forward now a little bit, because I'm going off a little bit on a tangent. Getting to the Game Jam about last year. So I had this idea going around for a while about wanting to make originally it was going to be something called Wretched Express, because the idea was take this book and like chop up and like cut the page number in half was the original intention. Like make it was supposed to be less rules, more wretched. That was kind of the tagline I was going for with my Wretched Express idea originally.
Wretched light.
Yeah, kind of that deal. And of course, eventually he did do Red RPG, which kind of fit that. And now he's got Micro Red, which he's doing for some of his like settings. Because some of the settings he's now re-releasing for the Red RPG. Because the Wretched Epoch is now Bella Epoch. He did the same with, there was a second one. New Flesh uses the Red RPG now, the newest version of New Flesh. And Swords and their Savage, and I think it's like their Swords and Savagery book uses the red system, but it's kind of a redo.
Yeah, that's what Mark was talking about last week.
Yeah, which I think he said it's kind of a redo of Wretched Bastards, which I have that one too.
Yeah, very similar.
Yep. And so I thought about wanting to do that for the Game Jam originally. But the timing that I was trying to do, because I work full time, and that my job takes a lot out of me sometimes. Because even though I would rather have a physically demanding job than sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I like that. Less rules, more chicks. That's always a good thing. So
Yeah, it did. It was, and at the time, it was less chops, more chick. Chops is what we called it, playing rock paper scissors in the LARPing days. Dan is one of my players from the old LARPing days.
Fun fact: I actually did get to play in a Wretched game with Miguel and Sylvia and some of the people in the Wretched Discord. It was I joined in I think it was the second episode. It was they were doing the 7 Deadly Sin Sisters, where we were having to go through this church and try to figure out what the heck was going on. And I created my own character, and I created this private eye detective. Basically, you're very much Tracy Dick kind of guy, 5 o'clock shadow, always smoking kind of dude.
Right.
And the funny part is he when he had a scene after he had a scene for a moment where I got sentenced to go into the chapel area, and I got seduced by 2 succubi and ended up having a naked and having a 3-way on the Catholic altar in the chapel. Yep. And of course the pastor found me there still naked and just passed out, my character. So I'm just like, oh, that was amazing. So that was the very first time I ever got to play Wretched, and that scene happened. But coming back down on topic was, I didn't want to do the Wretched Express because I knew that would take a while. So I was trying to think of what I would want to make. And and I've always been a fan of I've always been a history kind of buff, just because of how I'm wired. Yeah. So I've always been a big World War II, but also
gamers, it seems.
Yeah, my biggest one is World War II. I have a Wretched Armageddon, which is kind of their World War II book that they have. That's one of the other guys put out. I have a Operation White Box, which is a World War II white box game. So you can play actually World War II using the white box system. Gotta love. But then another, I don't know why I started thinking about my old 8th grade history teacher, Mr. Pittman. And there was a entire week when he was teaching that it was all solely focused about the Civil War. And he would actually dress up as a Union soldier that entire week while he was teaching it. And then that Friday, we would go on a field trip to the Pea Ridge battlefield here in Arkansas, because that was actually one of the Civil War's battles was here in Pea Ridge, Arkansas. So we got to go there, explore the battleground, see the artifacts, and they even shot off the cannon a couple times for us. So it was really fun.
Right, that's awesome.
And of course, even though even some of the judges even said that there isn't really, even though there's not much of an ask for Civil War games, it's not one you still see done a lot. So I figured might as well just make myself stand out a little bit and create this. So that's where Wretched Dixie came into play.
Well, Wretched seems like the proper system for what can be a controversial time in history, depending on the slant you take to it, But I think Brewski here does have it right. Gotta love the Red and Wretched settings for the ability to introduce zaniness, and zaniness is a word for it. There's no denying that Michelle and Sylvia have a very particular style. And, I was catching up on the red rules that they included along with the darker that I picked up. He does state his intent with that is to have something wretched and the Wretched verse is a very particular kind of genre, style, and even setting that he's expressing through these books and settings. Yeah. So red was part of his attempt to present a more setting agnostic system that's still essentially the same. Do you have much experience with red yet yourself?
I've read it over. I haven't. The thing is, I've been stuck playing so many games now that I'm actually missing being the forever GM right now. So I've been needing to want to get back into that GM spots and just do it. And the one thing I'm wanting to do is, okay, now where did I put that book?
I know the feeling. I've been feeling the itch recently myself.
Okay, it's hiding over here in the pile that I can't get to right now. But I recently acquired Cities Without Number by Kevin Crawford. And when I was on T-Shirt Historians, I forget, it was a Tuesday stream, I think. A guy came into the stream and talked about running a cyberpunk Bronstein. They called it a Cyberstein. And I have been autistically pondering over that idea ever since I saw Cyberstein. And that's why I got Cities Without Number. Because I've actually talked to Harmony Ginger on and off here and there, just trying to shoot some ideas off of her.
Right.
So because the idea is create a city. Everyone creates the factions, including the enemy factions that are going to go up against them. I got the big old bad Corpo faction that's going to be kind of pulling the strings around, and then we all see how everything plays out, kind of deal in the city. Who's going to survive? Who's going to become? Which group is going to join whose? And all that kind of deal. So that's kind of the idea I've been tossing around.
Have you done many bronze teams up to this point? Played in many of them?
This would be my first time running a bronze team, which is why I ended up actually getting the How to Win a D&D by Jeffro. Was because I started really looking at the Bronsteins, and it was I found it actually on Walmart for pretty cheap, and so I was like, all right, I might as well just get it, and I'll read it and see, and it actually did kind of help me a little bit. It kind of figure out some stuff.
I think it is safe to say that there is no better measure of success than your ideas being peddled at Walmart. So, congrats to the Jeffro and the Bro SR, man. Congrats to them.
Yeah, and I mean. And I love how, because when the whole team, I was a big, anti-Bro SR guy at first, because I had so many bad, bad interactions with some of them, yeah. Because you can tell who's trolling and then who's being, excuse my language who's being, a legitimate asshole, basically,
right,
when it comes to some of the guys out there. Scudder for Mike, though, I've had nothing but great things to say about him. And I even actually, when all the Bro SR crap that I had with him started, he was the one that came out and be like, hey, this is not what we're like. We just want to be able to help out and teach people how to kind of play. Thank you, Jeffro, as COA says. And that's when I eventually said, okay, if you want to try to get me to think a little bit better about you guys, then how about you come on my stream sometime? We can interview, which led to the interview that I eventually had when I first started streaming at one point with Scudder for Mike, just asking questions about the Bro SR and why the hell you guys act like that.
Well, yeah, actually, I followed along a lot of the drama. My initial exposure to those guys was actually John Mollison's solo AD&D campaign over on YouTube. So, and prior to that, I was lurking with an X account, but hadn't even thought to look for RPG content and people on there on X. So, and that's how I stumbled into the community. So it was, I've watched a lot of the Bro stuff myself, and my experience with them is basically the same. I've never had a ton of negative interactions with them. And all the Bros I've interacted with have honestly been at least polite, if not actually friendly. And I'm becoming progressively good friends with Scudder for Mike.
Yeah, we speak of the man and he appears. We said his name 3 times.
And it's
like Beetlejuice.
And again, I said, it's making the rounds on Twitter, but Mike runs a hell of a good game, man. He runs a hell of a good game, and really knows how to set atmosphere, but still manages to be concise and succinct with his descriptions. Knows about pacing and keeping the game going, and a lot of great stuff. Well,
yeah, I love. Yeah, because he killed your character and you thanked him for it.
Best stuff, man. Best stuff. There you go. That is right. I am owning that shit, man. I am on it. I made lame cool.
So, but yeah, I ended up just making that game jam thing, and I interviewed it. I didn't place, which I didn't think I was going to for my first thing, but I mean, it was still something I'm still very proud of, that I actually took the time and I created something. And eventually, it did take, of course, afterwards, it took me a while because I went back, I did some editing, I had some fresh eyes. I had actually Patty of Patty's Parlor look at it to give me some fresh eyes, see what I should rewrite, see what I should change and all that. And I actually took most of what he said into consideration. So I got rid of a bunch of stuff, changed a few words around, and then you see the Wretched Dixie that you see now. That's up available for absolutely free on the Red Room website, which is Red Room spelled backwards.
Mortar it.
Yep. I could never figure out how to say it. I feel like if I try to say it, I'm going to summon Cthulhu or something.
Yep. Because there's people out there going the redroombackwards.com.
How funny would that be if that's actually what you had to type?
If Miguel is smart, he'll buy that domain name and have it redirect to the store.
Yeah. Miguel is actually the reason why I still use the name the Jim Jones of Classic Gaming, because when Venger started the shadow darkening of the hobby drama at the time, I eventually came out and I just said, I did a whole rant video being like, I am done with this. We have bigger things to worry about. And I was going to say, what I meant to say, I was going to be the Jones County of the OSR, being that how Jones County during the Civil War separated itself from both the Union and the Confederacy to try to stay away from the war. And I said, on accident, the Jonestown of the OSR. And then I went back and I realized, oh shit, I made a boo-boo. And I did a post saying, I meant to say Jones County, not Jonestown. And then Miguel was the one who commented, no, run with that shit. And if you want me to like make sure I'm not using so much language, I can. I apologize if I'm using too much language here talking about this, but that's
if you get too much, I'll tell you. How's that?
Yeah, I'll try not to swear so much. It's like
my limit.
Yeah, it's like one F word. That's it. PG-13.
Fudge. Oh, that's it. That's it. No F words.
Hunter not knowing. I knew history. It just didn't somehow connect in my head at the time for some reason. Because I knew what I was talking about. It just didn't think county. It said town. And so that's why when I was sharing the classic gaming, there was that picture of Jim Jones on the background of it. And then at one point, when everyone was trying to gang up on Harmony Ginger for that minute, I did the meme where it was because I was using kind of like Bandit Keith as kind of like my profile picture for a while for like my Ultra American. So it was a picture of Jim Jones and his wife, but I put the Bandit Keith head on Jim Jones. I put Harmony Ginger's little Chad wife photo that she has on Jim Jones's wife, and I was joking like, we're gonna be the new movement of the OSR kind of deal. Oh. And the funny was how serious people took it. That's what cracked it up even more, was how serious people took it.
And that's the thing. I think that's what gets the bros in hot water online, is that you can't hear the tone, the sarcastic tone, or because there's been a few times, people I've interacted with who I've gone, is this person serious? Because if they're serious, what they're saying is actually quite scary. Like,
I just got Punk King's little pun there, a Kool-Aid, if you will. Because what's funny is that's kind of the thing. Because when I actually did my interview with Scudder for Mike, I filled a water bottle with fruit punch Kool-Aid. It was No, I didn't fill it with fruit punch. I had those Kool-Aid little pouch things, and I was drinking those as we were talking.
Before the show starts, we need you to drink the Kool-Aid. Drink the Kool-Aid.
Hey, Todd.
And thank you, Mr. Blackwell. I am so glad to have you here, man. It's an honor.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that, DMG. What do you mean by I did the same thing, so it was a pro?
I think he's talking about me, but I don't know what he's talking about either.
Oh. Yeah, Patty did make the Ginger Chad profile picture for Harmony. So
yeah, that's right. That should go on your artistic credits, because the memes are definitely because that's one thing that's going to be lost to history, is who came up with this freaking genius meme. I mean, we know the Viktor Gorchev meme. We know the provenance of that particular thought crime, but we definitely have to learn to preserve these things. Yes,
yeah, that's why I've been buying so many books. Because as much as I love having digital files so I have more space, I'm buying books in the off chance the EMP ever decides to hit, mostly.
Yeah. That's why I like hardback. And that's the thing, man. I am just grognardy enough to not really take the PDFs. I haven't switched over to them, so that it's like I've had the Acts PDFs forever and ever, and I've skinned them a little bit, but I'm old enough where whatever I read digitally doesn't want to stick on my brain as well. Now that I've got the actual books, I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm ready to do some heavy lifting, literally and figuratively.
My hard rule I follow when it comes to getting books is if it's less than 200 pages, soft cover. If it's more than 200 pages, hardcover.
That's a pretty good rule. That is a pretty good rule.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of saves the room because I mean, a softcover book like the lovely Men RPG right here, the most famous one that got them banned from Drive-Thru RPG.
Oh, is that what that
Yeah,
is? I never heard
this was the one that got them
I
banned, the very first edition of Men, because they have Wretched Men now that you can get, but this was the original version that got them banned from Drive-Thru.
Why is that? You know what? Tell me your version.
Are we streaming to YouTube? Because if I read this and YouTube catches on, it may get your channel struck down. So
we won't do that. No reading, but
let me just tell you that my father was here earlier because he was helping me with some stuff, and I read to him the stuff that was in this book, and he was shocked and laughing at the same time with how far they went with it in this book. But like I told him though, Miguel and Sylvia were wanting a more like adult type of TTRPG. They didn't want kitty gloves like D&D wants to do now. They wanted an actual adult game, and that's what Wretched RPG does.
I agree. He so strongly expresses and really groks that spaghetti punk moniker that's been labeled on it. It's old kind of B movies that we love and stuff like that, but it's also the core of the anti-hero as the protagonist. Game like you got a pair.
Compliments of Patty. Yep. So don't be a wuss and game like you got a pair.
Oh yeah, and Dan was saying here that he's like, oh, you wanted to end things the way they are, and the fact that you used a Jim Jones reference instead of a Jones County reference is wrong kind of ending things.
Yeah, but it's still, again, it's funny because again, it came from a complete accident, and I tried to backtrack on it, and everyone else told me keep it and just run with it. So. Yeah, I need to make myself my own like Jim Jones shirt with the phrase "Everybody plays games, friend." Because when I say that, I will reference that quote usually. That's something he says. Everybody plays games, friend. And I even got the glasses.
It changes the tone of the show completely when you put them on.
It's like, give me your wallet, your clothes, and your motorcycle.
So now go back to you were telling us how you got into Wretched. How did it and Wretched Dixie came about? Because you're a history nerd, but it was part of the game jam this year. That was part of what the Red Room.
End of last year, about Christmas time, maybe a little before that time, they did the Red Room Game Jam, which they were trying to get some more stuff to be able to put out there. So they did a game jam, and there was about maybe a dozen of us that submitted to it. And because I know Lord Mattias did a submission. I forget who else exactly did submissions. I know I have most of them. That at least the ones that didn't place but did submit that they put out for free. They were able to I was able to get those, and those are actually not bad. They actually did. Someone did a submission for. Sylvia did make a kind of a kid friendly, like a supernatural horror game.
Okay.
It was kind of like it was kind of very similar to, what's the movie about the kids that find a dead body?
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. It was kind of had that vibe to it. It was kind of Stand By Me kind of vibe. And so it was about these kids, they going out and they're exploring, but they cover like they kind of all the supernatural kind of stuff. That one I don't have yet, but it's on my list. I have a big list of games I still want to get. And someone made a sorry, I lost my train of thought. Someone made a supplement, like an adventure for that game. So that was one of them. And then I ended up just creating Wretched Dixie. And then, and after I submit, it was all just a Word document I just made, just typing out my thoughts, the enemies. I did my own little set of rules for mass combat.
I rather like the layout that is presented on the PDF. Is that something that did Miguel step in and help you with that, or is that your work?
Yeah, I don't have any of that programming on my computer to be able to do that, nor can I afford it with my budget that I currently live on. So Miguel kindly and thankfully, I do thank him for that. We found the cover is a public domain. That's what we're doing. It's a public domain picture of a Civil War battlefield. So we use that for the cover, right there. And then he did all the layout and the kind of the page design for Wretched Dixie. He did that.
Excellent. Yeah, that so it's a nice piece, and I like the fact it's not just even just a module; it's a mini setting. It kind of
Yes,
because it relies a lot on the historical, and you've presented several grains of adventure ideas in there, like three prominent ones. I like the three adventures presented in there. But
yeah,
do you see any like expanding this, building on it in the future? Will there be sequels? Will there be a revised edition as things go on? Have you already written more for it that you haven't released?
I have not written anything more because I like Miguel and other guys that keep saying maybe they'll expand more, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want to. Like, it took me so long to even get this done and presented on time for the game jam. I don't know if I necessarily want to create even more on top of that and try to just shove more in there when I took so much of my time to even make this. If I did anything, I would probably just a little more like a mini adventure attachment to it, like a couple more just adventures that you could tie into it. Because it's funny because someone left a review on the Red Room page for my module that they didn't like that I threw in the folklore monsters into my adventures. Now, given it's a tabletop game, and I specifically say in my book, you can run this however you want. You don't have to take everything I say word for rule. I do not advocate for raw. I advocate for read the effing manual.
Yep. But there's
and so
it's certainly a historical period where there's a lot of things to explore, and you've given enough of ideas. And Blackwell asks, "Are you happy with the sales of the game so far?"
So Todd, it's an absolutely free PDF. I make nothing from this. Miguel and Sylvia make nothing from this. This was just something I did for the game jam, and I've actually gotten beside the one kind of negative comment I got, I've actually gotten quite a bit of good feedback from it. The biggest one that I've gotten is everyone loves how I did the mass combat, because the way I structure mass combat, because one of my biggest things that, again, I'm very open and blunt with Miguel and Sylvia about how I think about the game. And even though I do love the game and what's in it, it can be overwhelming sometimes with how much they put into a book. And Todd, I don't know anything about the just really quick. I don't know anything about the download content. I don't know how many people are downloading it. I will have to get in touch with Miguel and Sylvia and see what those numbers are like to see how many people have downloaded. I mean, excuse me. From the feedback I've gotten, I assume it's been like quite a few people have downloaded it. And so Wretched does not come with its own, like, it has like results of mass combat, but it did not come with mass combat rules.
Yeah.
So I decided to create my own mass combat rules, and to save people from doing from more number crunching and stuff, I made the mass combat rules more kind of narrative. So it's a roll. So you're rolling off against each other, no matter if it's like you got units fighting against each other or it's the South versus the North. Doesn't matter how you're running it. It's whichever soldier is the highest ranking, you're rolling their magnetism, which is their charisma, against the enemy's highest ranking magnetism, and then you're basically you're keeping tally of who wins and who loses the most, and then the idea how I phrase it is if you're the players and you have the most, you win that battle. However, even if you don't have the highest amount of wins, you can still narratively win, but you're suffering but that's at great loss.
Got it. Right. So, and it's a way to enforce the historicity of a battle. We know which side won Gettysburg, but you can still use those mass combat rules within there to see how good or bad your particular unit took it in that
Mm-hmm.
battle.
Yeah. Because I even had some fun with it. Because I've said like you can either play it like historically straight through as the Union winning, or do some historical fiction fun and have the Confederacy maybe win a battle or two that they shouldn't have won. I mean, it's a game. That's what makes this so fun about it. You don't have to be 100% realistic with how the events of the game went. That's what I've always liked about it.
Are you an alternate history enthusiast too? Like you like that particular brand of fiction?
Oh, that's why that's one of the things I love about especially when I start running, because when I start doing the Operation White Box, I'm going into the supernatural aspects of World War II. Like there was the whole like the Nazi occult where they were trying to find Odin's spear,
right, yeah.
and the history and the Holy Grail and all that. I really wanted to hone in on those, especially because that's what really sticks out to me. Not just the war itself, but everything else that may have been happening in the background that we may not have known about.
Yeah, all kinds of, and I think that can be said for any period of history if you dig into it enough. There was a lot of really interesting and downright scary things happening behind the scenes of any. Same goes for World War One. Same goes for Civil War, Revolutionary War.
Because hold on, this one's in range because this is the Operation White Box right here, and this one you're mostly playing as the Allies because you can choose like which country you are from. You can also play as German, but you're basically playing still against the Nazis all the same. But there is a section in here. It's a mini setting for the Nazi occult.
There we go.
And I bought there's a TTRPG author out there. He makes a series of solo like playbooks for different games, and I bought the one that he made for this game because that's something I want to do because I've been looking into doing like solo play for a little bit.
Excellent. What draws you into that? You've never done any solo play before?
Not myself. No. Now I've done solo play with like a board game and stuff because I have some board games that do that.
Right.
But mostly because I like the idea that some of these games I'm probably never going to get people to come to a table to.
Yeah.
So if I want to enjoy those games, then I got to basically do it myself. And I actually have quite a few different. They're not here, but in my various cabinets and totes I had to order because my collection expands so much lately with all the books I find. I have a couple like a solo play help books kind of deal.
Yeah.
And I even have that. I have the first edition Mythic Game Master emulator as well, which is the one that a lot of people like to use because you have the tables and the charts and all that that are in that help. And I've actually used the GME for even like my regular games. If there's something that I know I can't just leave to a skill roll, then I leave it to chance, and you will use that table to be like, is this likely, unlikely, how so, kind of deal, and I will use that table.
Yeah, it's a tool. I'm actually relatively new to Oracles myself, but I've been solo gaming for a long time, and it was definitely one of those things that seems obvious in retrospect. Like I've always been one that when I was DMing, I go, okay, well, I don't know, is that door locked? I don't know. I'm going to roll a D6. On a 4, 5, or 6, it's locked. Okay, yeah, it's locked.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you going to do about it? So I always use dice roll for improvisation and narrative purposes. And Oracles were the first time I saw it kind of codified into something definitive. Like it was around the time me, myself, and Di had launched his first season when he started the show. And that's when I first learned of Mythic, and I said, I'm going to look that up and give it a try. I'm a big fan of that. And it's definitely become a great fixture. It's a great tool for, like you just pointed out, DM stuff, even if you're not playing solo. Oracle is really useful.
Mm-hmm. I did listen to his solo play podcast he had on Spotify before he kind of decided to put that on hiatus for a while, and that was actually really good because he did 3 seasons. First season was Savage Worlds, which is one I still need to play because I've always heard good things about it. The second one was Iron Sword, which I have the files for, but how I like to learn if I got a new game is instead of just reading through it, I like to try to find someone else who's played the game and I listen to them play it. That really helps me like be able to understand it better. And even like, and then I can hear them say, "Hey, this mechanic doesn't work very well, so try it this way," kind of deal. So there's been some people that have done that. So Iron Sworn was built a lot for solo play, though you can run it with groups as well. there are other games that use that system as well. And then his third season was another D12 game called Dominion RPG, where it's a D12 roll under system. And I actually bought that book because of that season. I got that book.
That's the only one I haven't picked up yet. I picked up Iron Sworn because of him and started playing Savage Worlds myself because of him. But very, very similar. And I am back the Kickstarter on Broken Empires. I'm looking forward to that when that arrives.
All right, so I don't know what else to talk about because I guess we'll go back to Wretched Dixie. Because what I did was I created a basic timeline for like the Civil War, just covering some of the main events. I like that he actually found a public domain picture of the moment that Abe Lincoln got shot by John Wilkes Booth. I thought that just narratively fit.
It does.
So, and then the character creation. I wanted to be like very specific on like if you're going to create a character in this setting, it kind of needs to be very specific because if you're going to play in the military, you're playing the fighter soldier kind of deal. Although if you're just wanting to kind of be like a normal person, you're interacting and you're trying to do other stuff, you could be, because I had like a common citizen that becomes an accidental hero. I did a likely victim, which is like maybe someone who just got dragged in the middle of the war that wanted no part of it. I like the idea of you have a shaman, because I know the Native Americans had a big part in the Civil War as well. So having a shaman in there was kind of a neat idea, I thought. Yeah. Of course, you got your spies and gunslingers. That one was going to be an obvious one.
Yeah.
And then I had funny actor and singers. So you could have some actor characters that you may try to stop John Wilkes Booth from killing the president, maybe, if you wanted to have a scene like that.
You know, it's like you listen to historians, and one I listened to was recently saying like, well, and keep in mind that like 99.9% of places during the war never saw action, never heard a shot. It was just something that happened in the papers for them. Like, so there's a lot of room to tell wretched stories far away from the battles and the armies and all that stuff. Just, you know, the people who were living in small towns and having crazy shit happen to them and weird experiences. I like the cryptid based scenario that you included in there. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, then when I was doing the enemies and the NPCs, I actually did look up like what ranks did they have like during the Civil War, because I wanted to be faithful to making this module. Like I didn't just want to make stuff up on the fly. I want to be as historical. I still wanted to be still historically a little bit accurate as possible, while still being able to have my own spin and fun with it. So you have all the basically your enemy soldier NPCs and enemies, I didn't. Originally, when I made this, I had them I put them as like Confederate/Union private, so Confederate/Union sergeant. But it was like you didn't really need to do that.
They're the same no matter which side they're on.
Patty. That was actually that was one of Patty's suggestions. Was like it's kind of redundant depending on no matter what side they're on. It's still a private, still a sergeant. So I ended up just scrapping that part. That actually did help save a lot of room, because I think I expanded from 20 pages to maybe down to 15, I think.
Okay.
When I did the whole editing and redo. And then again,
the PDF I have clocks in at 15 pages.
Yeah, which again, because I know Miguel wasn't considering putting this out as a physical. I'm still debating whether I myself will or will not make physical copies myself to like sell to people, and I may not even sell them for that much. I may just charge mostly for shipping and handling, and if I give anything left over from that, then that's what I'll get. So
yeah, so be it. But it's just that physical copies, and there's definitely something much more real about having something you wrote in your hand.
And it's not gonna be like a paperback thing, because it's like 50 pages. It'll be more like one of those like a decent zine kind of feels,
a zine kind of thing. Like
maybe
books.
Maybe a glossy cover in the back, but that'll be probably just it if I do. Depending on budget, because again, the joke is I'm 32 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. I actually found
shows confidence. You will.
You will. Cyrus Wright.
Pay attention. Listen to what we're saying, and one day you too can live in a van down by the river.
Yeah. So Cyrus Wright also puts out some good stuff, and when I was on a stream with Patty a while back, we were running the Tiny Dio, as we call it, RPG system. We
Tiny
actually
D10,
used
yep.
we actually used one of Cyrus's games to actually create the world and kind of be the Oracle as well. Which
Roll
I then
with it? Was it roll with it?
Yeah, it was roll with it. I think it was. The one thing I had though, we were playing a D10 system, but we were using a D6 Oracle. So I ended up making my own D10 Oracle because of that. And I think I put it. Did I put it out there? No, I did put it on X. I remember sharing it on some Discords that the Tiny D10 guy was in, because we were both on the Eclectic Goat podcast on the show, and he was on that Discord server as well. So I ended up sharing that with him.
Okay.
So
makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, hey, D10 system, D10 Orca. That just felt right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my personal favorite is the D6 Oracle, which is the one that's included in Calarath, because it's nice and simple. But I can see with the Tiny D10, you need a D10 Oracle. Even percentile is just slightly off, you know?
Yeah. I honestly prefer using the percentile die, because I like having there's this much of a percentage that this fails, or this much of a percentage this one succeeds. So because the D100 is so rarely used with my dice, so I like using the D100 if I get the chance to. But one die I've been wanting to look for is there's a D20, the Fate Mill die, which has it's a yes and or the yes but and, or you could just, they even have like a free PDF that you can download, and you can just roll a normal D20 to go with it for what you want to happen.
Just look up the result, but that's really cool. Yeah.
And then kind of go and continue really quick. I'm trying to stay on topic, but it's like I love how I talk about something and then I just go on about something else, because I do the same thing on my own show as well half the time. So I'm trying to stay on topic. I did get Colorarth War God. That was the one game that I got because I saw you guys get it. So
yeah. That's a great one. Castle Grief would be a dream guest for me on the show.
Yeah, and then of course I had the rules for mass combat, which only takes up a single page of the PDF. It's just those pages.
And simplistic. I can see where some people, the people who are more fans, like the people who like Hell March, are probably going to use Hell March rather than this mass combat.
Which I did get Hell March. I got the PDF. I'm eventually will get the book.
And that is good in its own way. But for something like the Gobstein that I did, the kind of Bronstein thing, a mass combat system more like what you have, where it's much more simple and bare bones, comes down to a handful of rolls, or even a simple one, and it's less about the tactics and choices of the commanders. That's the kind of thing that I needed to keep my action moving. I need that from time to time when I'm running a game.
Now, I will say DMG, mass combat only sucks if you do it wrong. Like Horde Wars, for example, has a decent, also a mass combat system, which I have played in a few times. Because I remember one of the games we played in, we joined the Crusader armies to fight against the Drakkarian heathens. And so there's a whole mass combat thing we had to do, because while we were fighting our battle, the Crusaders were like going back and forth with the Drakkarians, being like, okay, the Crusaders are winning. Oh no, they're being cut down. Oh, they're getting the revenge. Oh no, they're getting cut down some more. Kind of deal. So it was very much back and forth until we defeated the leader and the dragon that he was riding.
This is Dan, as I mentioned, is a veteran of my LARPing days, and mass combat, i.e., combat that involves a multitude of individuals in the LARP, really sucks. It really does suck. So he means a different kind of thing than we mean with mass combat. As opposed to leading armies, it's a mob of individuals. So imagine if you had 12 people trying to run a 5e combat, or 4e combat.
What's actually funny was because Wretched didn't have its own mass combat rules in the main RPG book, I was trying to find the mass combat rules that were already existed out there that I was thinking that I could try to use for my book for the game. So I tried to find D&Ds, and those were just convoluted as heck. I found a couple homebrew ones, and I had a weird time trying to understand them. So that's why I was like, screw it, I'll make my own, basically, is where I went from there. And Todd, yeah, that was fun because I think that battle at the time I was playing my Orc Crusader Omagug, which everyone started to nickname the Agent of Chaos because he would just run headfirst into battle without any regard of his own life. And the only time that bit him in the butt mostly was when he charged into a basilisk den and got immediately turned to stone.
Oh yeah.
But then they killed the basilisk and he was brought back to normal. But he never went into caves like that again after that. He was always scared of the basilisk. That one got him the most.
This one, I can't tell if Patty was referring to Calorath or another game. It's easy for players to figure out with themselves so that the DM doesn't need to be there for every single matchup. I've heard similar things about Horde Wars, like it's clear and simple enough that you could trust players. DM doesn't have to be there for every single combat because the rules are explicit enough that the players can handle it between the two of them.
Yeah, my Horde Wars book is also buried in the other pile over here, so I can't get to it readily. But I should have had the books more prepared. I just got 3 stacks of books over here that I should have stacked organized better. But yeah, because the thing about it is like this is not. I do not consider City of Mist, for example. This is not a rules light game, but it is simple enough for me to understand that I would consider it such. So that's why when I refer to some games as rule light, it's not always because it's such a small book, like say Men, but it's because I can understand it, and that's a big thing for me. Is if I can pick up this. Actually, this would be the perfect example right here because I'm trying to learn this monster right here against the Dark Master.
Oh, not familiar with it myself.
This is
so
like
so far.
So I've been looking at the PDF for a while. Let me see how many. Yeah, this is over 500 pages in this book alone. I understand it though. It's not that complicated for me. The tables help me to understand it in the game because it's very much it's very much inspired by Rollmaster and Hackmaster and the Middle Earth role playing game as well. It takes a lot of inspiration from that. And I had the PDF for a while because I got it on sale, and I finally got the book because I've been wanting it for a while. So
nice, that's great.
How would he even know he was stone? Oh yeah, because he turned immediately to stone right after he locked eyes with the basilisk. No, actually, that's not how it works. Once the basilisk bites you, it immediately turns you to stone. That's his effect.
Is it? I thought that was a gaze. I thought cockatrice was the touch and basilisk was a gaze.
Okay, so in Horde Wars,
of course, it could differ based on the game. That's true.
Well, so in Horde Wars, there is a Medusa. So the Medusa's stare could turn you into stone, which is funny because there was we had a wizard that was flying around trying to find it, and he locked eyes with the Medusa in midair, turning to stone and just plummeting to the earth in the game I played, which was hilarious. And then in the basilisk, it's the bite that basically petrifies you or turns you to stone in Horde Wars.
Got it. Scared he was absolutely petrified.
Petrified. Yep. Very much was. And then the adventures that I made for the game, I actually had a lot of fun making these adventures because I knew I wanted to have something with the Battle of Pea Ridge, being Arkansas born and raised. So I definitely wanted that. So I looked up some Arkansas ones. Originally, I was going to go with the Ozark Howler, but it wasn't listed in the cryptid book. Well, I don't have the bestiary, but the Wretched Bestiary has all the cryptids by state in the book. And so I went to Arkansas, and they had the Goral, which is like this weird kind of dog reptile thing with scales on its back and like a very like tail with spikes kind of thing, if I recall. Yeah, large tusk, wedge feet that ended claws, short row of horns run down its back, long to the tail with a blade-like ending. That's how it was. And I wasn't too familiar with it, so I actually had to look into it. I like that. Everybody must get stoned. Well, it is 2025 and marijuana is legal in most states, so.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But I like the idea. This was where I kind of played with the idea of you could play as either side if you wanted to, because for that first event, I said if you play it with the Union, it's kind of like this scene. But if you play as the Confederacy, It's like you're trying to find this creature as the
That's
battle's
what I like
going
about
on.
it. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
presentation. Is there's two different angles to be coming at depending on which side you're
yeah.
on.
Yeah. Now the one thing I did do was I did give like with some of the, when it comes to these monsters, I did up their experience. Mostly because I feel like because the way they how Wretched does experience, I feel like if you were trying to do it the way it normally does, it's going to take you forever. So I wanted to, yeah, it's yeah. Thank you. Someone else says bestiary. I have a tease that I say bestiary. It's supposed to be bestiary, but the way I don't know why it's spelled like bestiary. That's one thing that always bugged me when I read like when someone makes a bestiary because it's a book of beasts. It's not a book of best. It's a book of beasts. So that's
Bestiary. That
yeah,
sounds all newfangled European and shit.
yeah. So
Like
I
Americans, we like our beasts in American. Bestiary.
yeah, and the idea of these is because it's a civil war. A
Hmm.
gunshot is likely to just kill you right off the bat if they roll high enough for the damage. And even after the gunshot, which I didn't put this in there, but it's a good idea because many Civil War guys after they got shot ended up losing body parts even if they survived
Yes.
because they did not have the medicine that we do now. So they end up losing body parts due to just wounds getting badly infected. That should have been that should have been a thing I should have added in. Maybe
Yeah,
I might.
and musket balls would have a habit of
Yeah.
ruining limbs, shattering bones.
Yeah.
You can just it's a little bullet you can pull out. They actually do significant damage.
Yeah, so you're as much as likely to die from a gunshot as much as you are from this folklore creature that you're trying to either hunt down and make sure the Confederacy doesn't have control of. And so these are not just monsters you can easily take out. They are challenging monsters, and they are worth. And so for defeating a challenging monster, you deserve a good amount of XP for the most part, in my opinion. So I'm very big on the experience matching the challenge.
Yes.
Because how many times have I been like, oh, you barely make it out with your life from a cave full of spiders and you get 20 experience points.
Okay, so where does that land you on the hot button topic of gold for XP?
Okay, so if you're fine, no, now I have no issue with gold for XP, mostly because I have no issue because we're the way we play, we're always trying to find stuff all the time. Wherever we look, we're trying to get all as much treasure as we can. So I have had no issue with my trying to find gold for treasure because again, I currently play in an actual old school OSE game with Gary, who's Lord Mattias's co-host of the Second Watch show that they do on
Yeah,
Friday
okay.
nights.
Yes.
Gary runs this OSE West March. It's a homebrew setting he made, but it's completely old school. We have mappers, we have callers, and we use Stacko. So it's completely
Nice.
as old school as they come. And I'm usually the caller most of the time when I'm there because I cannot map worth to save my life at all. So I like that a certain point Confederate money has no XP value, which makes a lot of sense there. But Wretched doesn't have actual money in their system. They have a wealth roll that you do to see if your character can actually buy stuff or not. And you actually determine when you make your character how wealthy is your character because you can be broke as ish, or you could be like a rich noble, depending on how you rolled on that table.
Right.
Which I actually don't mind having. Actually, I like the idea that instead of trying to keep track of a whatever amount of number, like you have this much in silver, this much in copper, this much in gold, you just have a roll. Which for some people, which I know not a lot of people will like that, but to me, I like that at least having that option available.
Hey, Crimson Jester, glad to have you, man.
That's another one I have. That's another one I have yet to play. I have not played GURPS.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and that deviates a little bit, like starting back to the gold for XP.
Yeah.
And it's again, it's not something that's meant to be realistic or simulate a world realistically. It is meant to motivate your players, right? The players are going to pursue whatever incentives get them XP. So, like in the example you just used, no, I like the monsters to be reflected by an appropriate amount of XP. Well, you go back to like first edition and basic and stuff like that. You got shit XP for monsters and fighting. You got all your XP from treasure. So easily, 90% of your XP came from the loot. So ergo, your character was motivated to go out and get loot more than anything.
Yeah, I've had game sessions where we didn't kill a thing, but we found so much treasure that we leveled. I remember one day I was playing my Monday OSC game I was in. We got so lucky on treasure rolls, the thing we found, that we basically got to level up twice. Because that was how much treasure we found, and that's how much everything was worth. It's like, no, he wasn't fudging anything. He rolled up the treasure, and we got lucky.
Oh, gold buys weapons. Well, that depends on the game. So, depending on the game, like some games have a certain, no, you just get one XP. Calarath, we'll go back to that as a common example. It's every meaningful session, they call it, as ambiguous as that is, but every session is 1 XP. That's it. Yep. That's how you get it. So and there's even some stipulations for giving yourself bonuses as time goes on. But the XP system, whatever it is for each game, does drive what that experience delivers for you. If you're playing in a game that it's all role playing and stuff because that's stuff I've done. I've played D&D, but done away with gold for XP and said I'm giving it all out based upon role playing and story and what I like, and just gave out points each turn. So I had entire levels elapsed for the characters where there was no combat because I incentivized role playing over any kind of combat or looting.
So I like DMG's question here because it actually brings up something that I haven't experienced it much, but I like the topic as how would you handle arguments over dispersion of items up to the party? So in every game that I've played where it comes to everyone getting items, especially in Horde Wars, because in Horde Wars, you have a treasure table you roll on, and depending on what you roll, that's what you get. We are very open to discussing what treasures do we get. How do we want to split all the coin we found? Because there's been times where everyone keeps the coin they found, and then there's other times where it's like we add it all together and then we split it evenly, depending on who's running or who's playing. So we're very much open with that. And I actually remember there was one game I got a weapon that was worth much more than everything that was collected that I decided, hey, I'm okay just keeping this weapon and not getting a single coin for the rest of the treasure if I'm allowed to just keep this weapon because it was a pretty good weapon that I got. Okay. So I kept the weapon. Everyone else got the coin. Because Horde Wars, it's based a lot of about medieval Europe, so it's crowns, marks, and pence are their currency.
Right.
And then what was funny was in the Old School Essentials game, that the same guy who's running the Fabulous Ultimate game was running before we started that. We came across treasure. There were 2 items that we found. We found a dwarven throwing hammer, so basically kind of like Thor's throwing hammer, and then we found it was like. What is it those Catholic priests use that they swing around and they smoke?
Censer.
A censer. We found a censer that could summon an air elemental. And at the time, we were allowed...
Yeah, that's one of the classic gold items. A brazier, actually, is it? That's the brazier of someone...
In OSC, I believe it is actually a censer for an air elemental, if I recall correctly. And so...
I can't remember, but yeah.
So,
devices...
And we were allowed to have 2 characters. One was the main character, and the other was kind of like the backup retainer character that he was allowed us to play. We talked about it because they allowed me. I had a dwarf fighter, and then I had what was basically a storm cleric. So because he served as storm lord that was in this homebrew setting, my dwarf got the throwing hammer, of course. And then because no one else really had the need for the censer, they allowed me to also take the air elemental summoning item as well for my cleric. And that actually came in very well against the final boss, which was a giant queen ant that was under this ranger tower.
Right. Well, and that's one of those items that, it isn't necessarily as flashy, but once you can actually drop an elemental in a moment where you really need some extra help, you realize what a big difference it is to be able to toss whatever it is. An 8. The devices, I think, are even bigger, beefier. They're like 10 hit dice elementals instead of 8.
Yeah, One thing I learned about the when you come to the item that is to summon that elemental, whatever it is, make sure you prepare it before you go on the adventure. because it takes so much. It takes like I think it's like 10 minutes to prepare it, which if you're in combat is like 10 rounds, and you're not going to maybe survive that long.
Yes.
So prepare it before, because to summon it is 1 round.
That yes, oh right, I forgot about that. That's
yeah, and I'm just recalling the OSC rules at the top of my head. So if I'm wrong, someone can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
yeah. Also, you said that going up 2 sessions, and I had to bite my tongue, stop my own triggering. Yeah, because you only go up 1 level per session, man. You gotta stop.
Well, I guess what I seen was because. So because it took him a while because he had to the game master had to calculate how much all the gold that was worth, all the items we got. So when we returned for the next session, we leveled up from the previous session, and then by the end of that current session, we leveled up again because we got so much, and we stopped before the next level up.
I get you. So I have done that before myself, particularly with a low level character and a lucky treasure roll, which is you get enough XP where you hit that cap of you're just 1 experience point short of the next level. So, whatever you get on the following session is going to be enough to get you another level.
Yep. And then speaking of adventures, my next one I'll talk about is of course, it wouldn't be a Civil War game if I didn't mention the Battle of Gettysburg, which was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. I forget. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember. I didn't even put it down, but I forget how there was several hundred or several thousand soldiers were killed. I believe in that battle alone.
Thousands, yeah.
Yeah, because I know I put it there was almost I think there was almost or over 600,000 people alone that were killed during the Civil War. Yeah, close to 700,000. You're right.
Yeah.
And of course, when I was looking through, because Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I was looking through the Pennsylvania, and they had the dogmen, which are basically kind of like humanoids with dog heads. And
yes,
so
I am very familiar. Actually, I was going to change and wear my Dogman shirt tonight, but you got Vincent instead. I have an actual Dogman shirt. Yeah.
Nice.
Dogman is the new Bigfoot.
And of course, I had to have some fun with that. Of course, because I titled it "Who Let the Dogman Out." Because I like to have fun with my titles. Because the first one was "Carousing the Tavern," because actually the museum of Pea Ridge was the old tavern that used to be by that where the battlefield took place.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And then of course for the Battle of Gettysburg, it doesn't matter which side you're playing on, everyone's fighting for their life regardless. At the end of the day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep, and I guess something's going on with X or something because everyone's moving over to Rumble now. Or because I don't know. Well, Cyrus said AFK, so I don't know if you meant you were AFK on Twitter or if he's AFK.
I think he's AFK, and Patty is talking about we got to represent Rumble too because we're streaming on Rumble, so we're on the big 3 at the moment: Rumble, YouTube, and X. The
best free speech platform in the internet.
This is true. This is true.
And then, of course, the last adventure. This was probably my favorite to make out of the 3 that I didn't make because I got the inspiration mostly from National Treasure 2. Because as you see in the beginning, it goes all into the Knights of the Golden Circle conspiracy theory about the Confederacy. Okay.
I'm not familiar with that one. Lay it on me.
So, the Golden Knights of the Knights of the Golden Circle was this secret Confederate kind of group, conspiracy group that I think part of what they did, like in National Treasure 2, they were trying to find this lost ancient civilization that was made out of where their city was made from gold in that movie. Okay. But they were also in communication with the Queen of England because at the time the Queen of England wanted the Confederacy to win because she benefited from the slavery and the cotton picking. That was a big thing for the United Kingdom at the time. They were on the side of the Confederacy, but they didn't take part in the war. But they knew but they basically supported one side. And so what I chose to do was when it got to, because we all know John Wilkes Booth kills the president, takes off running. And of course, he's injured at the time because he hurt his leg trying to come down from the balcony where the president was and hurt his leg coming down. So he's limping, trying to get out of there as quickly as he can. And they end up catching him in a barn. So I decided Well, let's play with this a little bit because there is this. So again, kind of sound Cthulhu-esque. There's this entity called the Beyond in the Wretched RPG system,
Yes.
and this is where a lot of the supernatural and the demonic stuff will come from in the game. So I decided to play with what if the Knights of the Golden Circle was using powers from the Beyond to try to meet their ends. So in this it's a kind of a two-parter because there's the part going to the barn and then when you're in the barn. So as your Union soldiers, because you're basically playing the Union, or maybe you're the Confederacy trying to tie loose ends. So you got to kill John Wilkes Booth because he's the loose end or something.
Right. Okay.
As you're going to the barn, there's a shift in the air, and undead Confederate soldiers start popping up from the ground to fight you.
Right.
And you got to take them out. And then when you get to the barn, depending, I guess GM deferring if they get there before or after it happens. I say as soon as you get there, this power, like John Wilkes Booth is doing this ritual of some sort. They may know it, they may not, depending on who your characters are. And he becomes this large, giant. Like, have you seen the Elder Scrolls commercial? I think it is where there's that giant knight dude with the big old long sword.
Yeah.
Picture that, but completely gold. So he becomes like this giant golden eldritch knight powered by the Beyond. And with this giant sword, John Wilkes Booth, the Golden Knight, is now going to take down these soldiers that are trying to stop him from like completing his mission. And then of course from the gold armor, there's these tentacles that are like lashing out. They actually will sap the health from your players if they hit you. And so it's very interesting, like because I really like the idea of coming with that he becomes like this golden eldritch knight that's going to kill you all unless you all do something about it, basically. And then of course, because you got this golden knight form, and then you have this human form, which this human form you can easily just take him out with a bullet. His golden knight form, on the other hand, that's a challenge, and the experience rate confirms that.
Yes, I was about to say I noticed a significant jump in power between the mortal form and the golden knight form in the Wretched Dixie book. So yeah, people should be appropriately challenged by that one.
Yeah, that's one thing I really stand is I don't want to try to TPK my players right off the bat, but I want that challenge where they're fighting for their lives.
They got to. That's another perennial discussion because there's always a sweet spot to be maintained. Is nobody wants to kill their characters every single time, kill their player characters. No, nobody wants a TPK, but it has to be a real possibility or else the game loses something because the stakes aren't appropriate. They're not living up to the potential of the game.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be rock's fault everybody dies, but if you get them to death's door and they make it out of it in one piece at the end, you've done your job at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I've been on both ends of that spectrum too. I've had the DMs who it just seems they take it easy on you. It's nerfed and it's actually, I know you're supposed to die from failing that save, but you lived through it, And I've even done that too. And I've been on the other end of it with somebody who it seemed like no matter what we did, it was the dumbest thing in the world, and we all died because of it. So it was like, we had one guy who nobody wanted in the DM after a while because we always just died by the end of it, and it was for some arbitrary reason of his. No, we always die when you run. We don't want you to run.
Yeah, so in the OSE old school game that I've been playing in, I started with 3 characters I made. I had a dwarf, I had a fighter, and then I had a halfling. I was playing the dwarf for a while first, and then I think during the second or third session, he got killed because he was a glass cannon. He had 3 hit points. Mm-hmm. My fighter lasted a lot longer, ended up dying. Also glass cannon with only 3 hit points. And then at this point, though, he was allowing us to also do the retainer PC thing. So if you could bring your character along, but he was kind of treated like an NPC, and he only got like half the amount of like experience and gold that everyone else would get. So I started bringing my halfling along with my fighter, and then the fighter died. And so, but unfortunately, though, it took 2 character deaths for my halfling to finally get to level 2.
Quick moment to shout out. Thank you, Jeremy. Glad to have you guys here.
Yeah, good seeing you, War God. I agree.
And that's right.
I don't pull punches.
Players deserve less.
You mean they deserve more, as in they deserve more goblins?
They deserve more damage. That's what they deserve. More trauma, more damage.
Yep. And
Less
so,
effort on my part.
yeah. So, while I did enjoy making all three of those adventures, because what did I name that last one? Yeah, Gold Knight from Beyond is what I call that one. And so that one was probably my most favorite one to do because I got to play with because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I love listening about conspiracy theories. So there was a podcast I was listening to that
I'm kind of in the same boat as I don't know if I believe any of these, but at the same time, I don't automatically rule them out. And they're better stories than most movies.
Because there was a podcast that they had that most of them they do 2-part series about one conspiracy. Like they'll go over the conspiracy in one, and the second one they'll be discussing how true is one over the other. And they did one. It was a 2-part episode talking about the Knights of the Golden Circle. So I really enjoyed that. And then don't get me started about their Princess Diana episode because that left me spiraling and with questions with some of the stuff they talked about Princess Diana. That was a crazy one to listen to. Yeah, it was actually called Conspiracy Theory, and I forget. It was there's this one company that they make all these sorts of because they got a podcast that talks about old school fairy tales. They got a podcast that talks about cults and stuff and secret organizations. I just can't remember the name of the company that does those. Pun King is killing me with all these puns he's doing today. He's on a roll.
Man, he lives up to the name, man. Follow him on Twitter. It's a riot.
Yep. And then the final page that I did was just one of the biggest also gripes I've had with the Retro RPG was how much their skill list was at the time. It was just so expansive with how many of their skills because you have your attributes and those are modifiers. And then you got to add that modifier to whatever skill you could apply to it. And you may not even have that skill at the same time, depending on what you did. And he had at first he had this giant list of skills that even sometimes there was 1 or 2 missing. Because I noticed that with the Red RPG when he first put that out, there was 4 different kinds of magic, but only one of them was listed. And so that's why I just said why is there not just magic skill for one, and then depending on what you do, that just covers that skill for that person. Whether it's cleric or sorcerer or witch, right. Magic can cover all those just depending on who you are. And so I did when they redid the character sheets how they just left those skill sections blank because that means that means you write what skills your character would have down, and that's what you go by. You don't have to worry about the 100 other skills that they had originally.
Yeah.
And so
when you're playing in a game like Wretched, which spans multiple genres and historical periods, it's a lot more difficult to come up with a generic list of skills. Certain things are going to transfer no matter the time period, like brawling or athletics or acrobatics. That's always the same. But you can't have computers back in your fantasy game.
Yeah. So what I did was I made a simplified skill list, which I took all the skills from D&D and I used the thesaurus on them. Basically, was what I did. So what your usual D skills that you recognize, that's kind of what this simplified skill list is just reworded ways of those skills.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I did what I did was yours 3, for your brains, your wit, and your magnetism. They all that's all has their own little magic stat depending on what your class is. Because if you were a wizard, you were using your brains. If you were I believe it was because wits is wisdom. So if you were a cleric, you're using wisdom, and then if you were a sorcerer or a witch or anything else, you were using your charisma, which is magnetism in this game. And then toughness and sex appeal because again it's more of an adult RPG, and they do have stuff for sex and STDs and all that.
Yeah.
So it was also based on the old
detailed at moments.
Yeah, very detailed. It's also based on didn't they have what was the word they used? Because they had something like that when D&D was first around. Was it not charisma? There was another. Hold on, it's listed here in the book. I gotta look it up now.
Comeliness. It was the 7th attribute.
Yeah, comeliness. That was it. Thank you.
Yes, which I hated. I hate everything from Unearthed Arcana, just about.
It would have made more sense if they did comeliness and just replace that O with a U. at that point because that was basically what it was for.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. That's what it was. It was a hotness. Most just call it hotness.
Yeah. At this point, it's like just roll a d20, and the higher the roll, the hotter they are. Is how it's mostly done now these days.
What do you think the future holds for you? Like, you know, now that you've got a Wretched writing credential under your belt, are there other systems you would like to write for, whether or not they have a third-party license? Are there other Wretched or Red Room properties that you'd like to explore? What do you think the future holds for you?
So I actually do have something in the works. So of my games I have, because again I support independent creators, and Alexander of Bosback Games is the company he runs. Basically, he's made these two games, which is Ultra Now RPG and Kook's Duty 2D10.
Okay.
Now both these games use a system that's called Microlight 20.
Okay.
Which it's absolutely free. You can go find it out there. Like there's like people have made so many games using this system as its basis alone, but it's very much as rules light as it can go. There's a purest essence Microlight 20 version that's only like maybe 5 or 6 pages with some extras that's on top of that, because it's very much supposed to feel like the old school, because you have your elves, humans, dwarves, halflings, and then you got fighter,
The classics.
yeah, and then you got your fighter, cleric, wizard, thief. You got your usual stuff, and then of course there's the advanced version, which introduces like half orcs, half elves, and then there's also druids and rangers and all that if you want to go that. But the first few pages, old school D&D, but slimmed down so much because you only have 3 attributes. Hold on, let me open this up really quick so I can give a better understanding. Because you have 3 stats. You have your brawn, which is your strength, your agility, which is your dex, and then your brain, which is your intelligence. And that's it. That's all you have. And you roll for those, and that's your modifier.
Right.
But then you also have... Hold on, I got to find the skills. Because there are skill rolls that you can have. And there's only 5. You have craftiness, communicating, knowledge, physical, and survival. Now, how you roll your dice... You can combine the 3 and the 5 however you want, depending on how it works. Like if you're trying to get crafty with a fallen tree log, that would be like physical and craftiness. Like you're trying to like make something from it, kind of deal.
So I've played other systems which are much more flexible, and like rather than I have acrobatics and that's always tied to my dexterity score. There's things like I can use my firearm skill with my intelligence, and it will give me an idea of not just how good I am with firearms, but what I know about them, like how to clean them, how they work, how they might function.
Exactly. And what I also really liked about the system is spells. You actually spend your hit points to cast spells.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're good. I heard you. It did skip for a second, but I heard you say that you're spending hit points to fuel your spells in this game, which is kind of a cool innovation.
Yes. Yeah, but what's actually interesting, because at first you would think you're level 1, depending on your hit points, that's not a good thing to spend level 1 hit spells with using your hit points. However, I've been playing in this Kook's 2D10 game for a while now, and I think we're at level 9 currently, because we've been playing for like several months. So I have a level 9 conjurer with 40 hit points, and I think it's
that's a lot of spells.
It's half your level you can cast spells at, so I'm able to cast up to level 5 spells because it rounds up.
Right.
And so you can cast level 5 spells, and yes, the HP points increase as you go up. However, a 40 hit point wizard is nothing to mess with when you can just obliterate an entire group of imps with 1 fireball. Because the damage is based on your actual level, not your caster level, your actual level. Well, at level 9 is 96.
Yep, that's the way it was. That's the old school way for fireballs. You do that. So
I've actually been looking into that. Go ahead.
No, go. Pardon me. Yeah, I was just prompting you to continue with describing this game system and what are you working on for it.
So one of the things I've been to run a Fallout New Vegas style campaign that takes place in the there's a mod out there called Fallout Dust. It takes place 20 years after the events of the main game. As one mission: survive. Because the idea is you have to get them from one side to the other side. And so I was trying to mess with a few different systems. Like I even got Atomic Punk 2161, but I'm kind of on that one a little bit. Like I like it and I don't like it at the same time. But then I started looking at Microlight 20, and I'm like, what if I just reflavor this to make it like a game of I want? So the game I'm working on is called, the working title right now, it's Tech 3D6. And how it's going to be, the Tech, because it's a 3D6 roll system, plus your modifiers. Because, and I'll get to that part in a bit, but Tech represents the 4 attributes you will have: your toughness, your endurance, your conviction, and your head. So you got, so that's strength, dex, wisdom. Yeah, wisdom and intelligence.
Okay.
And so that's why Tech. I wanted to play with that a little bit. And then for the 3D6, it's you're rolling your 3D6, trying to beat the target. But here's the fun of it. If you get if your dice get 2, 3, 4, or a 2, 3, 5, which are actually different uranium isotopes, there's a mechanic I'm playing with. It's based on the song called Uranium Fever. It either gives you an opportunity or a complication depending on if you succeeded or failed.
So if you roll one of the isotope numbers, it'll have a direct effect on the game.
Yeah. And again, it's depending on whether you succeed or you fail, because there will be different levels of difficulty. Right. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it's not a straight up like 3D6 added together and add your bonus or it.
Oh no, it still is you. It still is you add them all up together. It's just that mechanic is based on the numbers you roll on those 3 dice.
Got it. Now I understand.
Yeah, because it's actually funny because I've been listening to this new podcast that's been doing a Fantasy Age Let's Play, and that uses a 3D6 plus modifier system.
Right.
So I've actually been. That's another game I've been looking into because the same people that made Fantasy Age also made the Dragon Age RPG as well.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so that's one thing. Like, and I've been trying. So I already got my races. So you got your normal humans. You have the androids, which are basically like the synths from Fallout. You have the manglers, which are your mutants, and then the ghouls are called reanimated. But for short, I'm calling them the Rainers.
The Rainers.
The Rainers, Reaners. The Rainers.
Okay.
And so those are the races, and I'm still working on what the classes, because so far I have Soldier and I have Scout. I haven't been able to figure out what the other 2 are going to be yet. But once I get those down, and then I'm just going to use the same 5 skills that were from the original crew. So your craftiness, your knowledge, your physical, subtle, and survival. It's going to be those 5 skills.
Got a request.
Yeah, because because whenever I'm able to, I join in to help to play RPGs with them all the time. So awesome. I've done a couple here and there. So I'm trying to figure out what DMG is trying to say no to. To me, trying to play with Patty or me creating a new game.
I have no idea. I'm guessing playing with Patty or something like that. I'll wait for Dan to put in there. Okay, we're quickly approaching a stop point. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm gonna have to wrap.
Oh, you're fine.
Go ahead and give you a chance to wrap up. Are there any things that you need to get out there before we wrap this up for the day?
No, just wanted to quickly share about Tech 3D6. I'm also, so I got those, but I also want to do the one thing that Microlight, the Pure Sense, kind of lacks. It doesn't have like a actual bestiary. It's just like a page of monsters with stats next to them. So I want to actually create an actual kind of bestiary for the game as well. So that's another thing that's going to take me a while. So I got to figure out how to reflavor the monsters, how to rename them, and how to stat them out for my Microlight, my Micropocalypse game, as I'm calling it as well. So, but that's also what I got. That's what I got in the works. So, but that's basically it about Tech 3D6.
Awesome, man. That's great. All right. Well, let me know when this new stuff comes out. We'll have you back on for a repeat round and talk more about this stuff. As you can see, someone wants to go out here, so I need to wrap this up. But Hunter, man, thank you again. This is my second episode. I really appreciate you coming on, making time for me to talk about your stuff.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. And if y'all want to make sure to follow me, you can follow me on X. It's the Ultra American TTRPGer at UltraTTRPGer. So it's UltraTTRPGer. And you can also follow me on Rumble and YouTube under the Ultra Mega TTRPGer. I usually will live stream on Rumble, and then once I'm done with that, I will just re-upload the live to my YouTube usually if you all can't catch me on Rumble at the time. So,
all right. All right. Once again, everybody, thank you for coming. Have a good evening and catch us next Monday evening. This is not next week's guest. Next week's guest is where we talk about first edition AD&D war gaming and solo play. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.